All right, greetings and thank you for joining us at FutureMoneyTrends.com. I'm here with Chris Martenson of PeakProsperity.com. You may have and have likely seen his video, The Crash Course. Originally released around 2008, it's been seen by, I think, around about 15 million people now, been translated into several languages. And it's had a big impact on people because it's kind of like we all had this feeling, and then maybe we saw a few things, took some kind of different ideas from different people, and include our own ideas. And then here Chris comes with just this avalanche of data and puts the whole thing together with the economy, energy, and the environment. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Daniel, it's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, Chris, I just want to start off with the introduction of your videos. You guys have updated these. So now we have the Accelerate Crash Course, and each chapter will be released for the remainder of 2014. With the update, has a lot of it changed, or have you just kind of done some minor tweaking?
Well, the answer is yes. Both of those have happened. For instance, we have whole new chapters. In 2008, I hadn't taken the time to explain quantitative easing because it wasn't a term out in the world yet, and shale gas and oil wasn't really out there, so we have chapters on that. So we've added, where the context has changed enough and there's new data, we said, okay, we're going to have to really add this. Of course, we updated all of the debt figures and things like that. And here's the interesting part, Daniel, in that process. I put that together after just taking a really, really deep dive. It was really something of a feat, And this time I had Adam Taggart really bearing in, and we went through all the data, and he was really asking this question, which is there anywhere we really got this wrong? And the good news is no. The bad news is no. So we feel really good that the story is solid. It makes sense. It helps to predict and explain where we are, and honestly, a lot of what we see going on in the world, when you wear the crash course hat and you say, oh, let me put resources into this story, I think the Ukraine makes sense and Iraq makes sense, and by the way, I think a lot of future events are going to make sense when you understand really where we are in this larger resource story.
Now, your website is Peak Prosperity. I love prosperity, but I hate the word peak in front of it because as a young person and anybody in life, you don't want to feel like that your opportunity is not going to be the same as others. However, you've made it a point in your website to say that your goal is to help people continue to prosper even through this change in our world and our monetary system. So I just kind of want to start off with, in the new economy, what is kind of your advice to people? First and foremost, educate themselves and understand the problem. But from there, what do they do?
Well, great questions. And let me put a different spin on the word peak. There's like peak performance, and we think that actually we haven't hit peak prosperity. We actually think that because of how we run our monetary system, we think that for most people, they are far less prosperous than they could be. And so we blow out the word prosperity. It isn't just how much money you have. To us, if you're really prosperous, you're safe, you're healthy, you have a really fulfilling job, you love what you do, you have deep relationships with the people around you. And so what we really help people do is understand that right now financial capital has utility. You can take dollars, you can click on a button on Amazon.com, have the big brown truck of happiness roll up with some product, a week later. We can convert our financial capital into other forms of capital that we think people really ought to be doing this because it'll give us resilience. So, for example, in my own yard, I spend money and a truck rolls up with compost in it, and what I'm doing there is I'm building the living capital of my garden because I happen to like to garden. But people can spend their time, energy, money building their social capital with the people around them, intellectual capital by learning, experiential capital by doing things. If you are rich in all of these forms of capital and your financial system goes belly up on you, you are way better off. You're more resilient and you're more prosperous than other people out there. And by the way, we believe, it's our underlying core belief, that the financial claims of our system, this is currency, what we colloquially call money, stocks, bonds, derivatives, all the paper claims on the larger economy are just growing exponentially. That larger economy obviously isn't growing exponentially. The system is geared in such a way that the powers that be are going to continually expand the claims because it's what they know how to do. But eventually, history says, what happens? You get a reset, and all of those claims suddenly have to get reset against real stuff. People call it wealth destruction, but it's not. It's a wealth transfer. We like to help people be on the right side of that so they can be prosperous.
Now let's talk about the word wealth. In the accelerated version that I was just watching right now, you do discuss actually the definition of wealth. I know it could be your health, it could be money, but for simplicity, most people when they think of wealth, the first thing they think of is like dollar bills and currency or stacks of cash. If you ever watched a music video, so what is your definition of wealth in the crash course?
We believe that there's only real wealth, and then there's claims on that real wealth. Real wealth is stuff that comes out of the ground. If you are an owner of iron ore or iron that's been manufactured into steel, you own real wealth. If you own a productive asset that generates cash flows, whether that's currency cash flows or other forms of, I'm using cash flows as a general term, but if you have an asset that produces a stream of income, whatever that source of income happens to be. It could be additional soybeans coming off your land. It could be goodwill that's generated. It could be who knows what. We believe that real wealth is the stuff that comes out of the earth and the things that humans make with it and do with it and deliver it. Those are primary and secondary sources of wealth. Currency, stocks, bonds, those are claims on wealth. We think they're real wealth because guess what? You can always trade them at any moment in time to get something. But if I had a stack of $1 billion and I couldn't use it to buy anything, I would really just have whatever the intrinsic value of the paper is in that $1 billion. So we believe that people need to understand that investing as a concept needs to be brought back and understood. Wall Street's defined it far too narrowly, and wealth is not how much tertiary wealth you have, how much cash and currency and stuff like that. It's your access to real, solid, producing assets and tangible wealth.
Yeah. Wall Street's definition of diversification is owning 3 mutual funds, right? So let's talk about fracking. Fracking. It's kind of like I'm kind of cheering for the human innovation side, and I'm sure you are too, because obviously we don't want bad things to happen. So fracking has been claimed as the solution. However, you and I spoke at the Casey Summit, and you made it very clear with great information that the oil production may be rising, but this is higher cost oil. And the great point to that is everybody who's pointing to the U.S. Daily or annual oil production, it is on the rise. However, gas isn't going down. Gas in Southern California is still over $4. I just wanted to kind of touch on fracking. For those who say it is a solution, why isn't it a solution?
For a number of reasons. You've touched on one of the more important ones, which is that fracked oil is expensive oil. So here's a myth that's out there. The myth is that because humans got really creative and clever, all of a sudden we discovered vast amounts of oil in the shales, right? So we discovered horizontal drilling and multi-stage fracking. The truth is that both horizontal drilling and multi-stage fracking have been around for decades. And what we didn't have, though, was oil that was over $80 a barrel. Once oil safely climbed over $80 a barrel, all of a sudden it was economically worthwhile for companies to begin to prosecute and chase those finds. And so what we can say clearly, however much oil comes out of fracking, the first thing we can say is it will never be cheap. Because you just have to understand why. In the Bakken, you drill down 10,000 feet, tip the drill bit sideways, go sideways for another 10,000 feet, typically in a lateral stage, a 25-stage frac off of that. So you've drilled 4 miles. You get an average well starts with 400 barrels per day, and it starts falling the minute you open that stopcock. And within 3 years, it's down to maybe 85% is lost. It's maybe 15% of its original production. So it's just these minuscule flows of oil for an extraordinary amount of effort to go and get it. And that brings us to the second point about fracked oil, which is that we don't run our society on the total amount of oil we get. We run it on how much oil or energy is left over after we go and get oil. So once upon a time, we were getting 50, 60, 70, 80, even 100 to 1 returns for our oil exploration efforts. That's the cheap oil in the rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. And today, we're getting returns that are somewhere between 5 to 1, 8, 9 to 1, something like that, explained by that huge 20,000-foot drill well that had to be undertaken to get a flow rate of maybe 400 barrels a day for a few years. We don't have the net energy coming back. And if you understand that, you understand why all the printing hasn't taken people off of the food stamp rolls, why it hasn't led to high-quality jobs, why this economic recovery doesn't feel like any others. It's because you need cheap energy to have an economic recovery that would resemble any of the ones prior. Don't have it and will never have it. And oh, by the way, the fracked wells deplete quickly, and once we stop drilling because the fields are full, the whole field will deplete really quickly. So it's an incredible. Fracking is going to give us a temporary, wonderful reprieve, and it'll be fantastic if we use it as a temporary reprieve to get ourselves in order for whatever the next energy future is. We're not doing that. We're using it to go to business as usual and say, everything's good. We got fracking.
How long does it?
Further from the truth.
How long can it kick the can? I'm not familiar with how many reserves, or I know it's creating these job booms in Texas and Oklahoma and Wyoming. But how long will this last? Or is this like a 10-year fix, or is it like a 50-year fix?
Well, so here's what we know. There's two things we have to discuss kind of separately, fracking for oil, fracking for gas. They're slightly different processes. There's a lot of natural gas out there, so that has a multi-decade sort of a lifespan in front of it. I think we'll peak in output somewhere around 2030 to 2040, somewhere in that zone. So there's plenty of that. Oil is what we actually run our economy on in a much more substantial way. There we're going to look at a peak in output generously at 2021, according to the EIA, according to private analysts. I trust a little bit more, maybe around the year 2018, those fields collectively, all of them, begin to go into decline. And then that's it. So we have, as far as I can tell, anywhere between 4 and maybe 7 years to enjoy increased production from shale oil. Mm-hmm. Now understand that all the conventional oil is depleting very rapidly underneath that as well. So, that's the typical stuff, the offshore stuff, other wells that are kicking around. So I'm looking at, 4, 7 years, something like that, and then we're right back where we started.
And it could be even worse. So then we could be at $150 to $200 a barrel oil, I assume.
Easily. When we got to $150 a barrel in 2008, everybody looks at that, and Congress said, was it speculators, and, it's this and that. This is really easy to understand. In the 6 quarters that preceded that $150 a barrel oil, in 5 of those, world demand either exceeded or matched supply.
Now, is it too... I'm sorry, go ahead.
So whenever demand slightly outstrips supply, the price of oil goes up a lot and very quickly. So right now, for instance, if Iraq's 2.5 million barrels of export went offline tonight, oil would get to 150 like that.
Is it too simple to just say, hey, a solution could be just to these car manufacturers need to produce cars that are double or triple the gas mileage? Wouldn't that extend it, even if we are paying $4 or $5 a gallon? Well, we're getting 60 miles per gallon. Could that be a human solution to the problem?
It could be, and it would be great to have started a while ago. Here's a simple statistic on that. If tonight Obama signs a law and the car manufacturers have the capability, all we're selling tomorrow are cars that get 50 miles per gallon or better. In 10 years, you'll have replaced half the fleet.
Wow. It
just takes time. Unless you want to mandate that people trash their cars and buy new ones, but I don't know how you could do that. It would cost trillions, and it wouldn't work. So it takes time. It just takes time, Daniel, to really switch out using efficiency standards to get to use less. What happens is the price of oil rises, and people just don't burn it, right? And they don't take trips, and they don't do as much shopping because they're putting more money into their fuel tank. I'm convinced that one of the pins that pricked the bubble in 2008 was $150 barrel oil, and that is something that we could see again.
On water, the U.S., obviously, especially the western U.S., we have a serious drought. I live in California, actually, and we're in the worst drought on record. Again, I mean, like with fracking, okay, we have a temporary fix. Rick Rule recently was telling me that he actually thinks that in California, we could actually have cities where they turn on the faucet, there is no water. I mean, those seem catastrophic. That's where people actually would have to leave. Is this something you see that will actually happen where a migration of people are going to have to move towards, essentially to Colorado and to states with water? I mean, everybody in Arizona, California, Texas, I mean, it can get dry really fast if we have a long drought.
Well, the good news on this horizon is that if the El Nino kicks in, that typically portends wetter times for California, and so we can all hope that actually transpires. Obviously, El Nino is not good for other parts of the world and leads to food issues. But this issue around water, this is one of the more mysterious ones to me, Daniel, because I look at a place like Phoenix, Arizona. I look at where it gets its water from. When you fly into Phoenix, you look down and there's all these emerald jewels, which happen to be golf courses. It's one of the sillier things you can do with water in a desert environment is maintain a large 18-hole golf course, but we do it.
Yeah.
And Arizona's in a position where if the drought continues within 6 years, there are a number of cities there which will no longer have access to water at all. And it's very serious, right? If Lake Mead goes below a certain level and everybody's sort of got a claim on it, the downstream claimants on that are probably not going to get those met. It's really a rather serious thing. So the first thing that should be happening to tell me people are serious is they ought to be putting a halt on all water-intensive growth patterns at this point in time. They ought to be, and they are doing this in many communities, starting to go with aggressive recycling of water, taking gray water, not putting it down the sewer, recycling it, getting it back out. That's all useful. But the larger issue is that if we are in a longer protracted drought cycle, which is possible, there's many places of the country that I deem uninhabitable. If you can't have water, you just can't live there. It's just not possible. So that's an issue as well, no question about it.
For money, again, getting back to human innovation, I want to get your thoughts on these digital currencies. We'll just throw Bitcoin out there because it's the big one out there. But could this possibly be human innovation and a solution to central banking in the current monetary system?
Well, it could be. I've long said when people say, "Oh, magic bullet time," what would we do? I would say we need multiple currency systems. Each currency system enforces some behaviors, punishes others. If we even had a situation where I could either choose Federal Reserve notes or Treasury notes, even just that slight balancing act, I think would force the Federal Reserve to think more carefully about how it was going to defend its product. They have a monopoly. Hey, they don't really care. It's like take it or leave it. You got to use it. So I believe that the competitive aspects alone would be great. Bitcoin, very interesting. It's the market saying we like this as money. It allows people to bypass completely, if they choose, the entire banking system, and that's a very interesting thing they can do. My concern around it is that if the authorities ever decide to get serious about it, it wouldn't be that hard to really take that system down because while you can't prevent people from exchanging the coins, you can prevent them from cashing them in, right? That's something that the system could do if it chose. But so far, system's been very tolerant. I haven't seen the Treasury Department come out against it, and most other countries seem to be okay with it. So it looks like the free market's got something going there.
Chris, you made the original Crash Course in 2008. We're in 2014. It looks like within this U.S. depression, we're gonna end up going into another downturn with the GDP recently coming out. Numbers down 2.9%. Are you kind of just surprised? I think I asked you this last time at the Casey Summit. I mean, this thing just continues to go on. The printing, everything. It's like everything you did in 2008. I'm sure you guys had to like double the chart because it was probably like 8 or 9 trillion, and now we're 18 trillion. And it just continues to go on. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? That it's almost as if no one cares. Kind of like I was talking to Annie Hoppin yesterday about the Germans want their gold back, and the Fed doesn't. They give them 5 tons, but nobody cares.
Yeah, people do care, but it's funny. I think in the United States we have one of the most heavily controlled media or propaganda outlets. I really have to use a term that strong. It's amazing the amount of spin that we have to consume in this country in order to try and get at what's really going on. But the truth is that people all over the world are becoming very suspicious, and why shouldn't they, right? We've spent how many trillions of dollars, and we just, clocked in a minus 2.9% GDP reading. You average that with the prior quarter, and we're less than flat. We're negative growth over the past 2 quarters. And people, I think, rightly should be saying, where's my recovery? And the answers aren't forthcoming because, honestly, I don't think there's anything the Fed can really do, because it's not just about the economic and monetary policies anymore. We have to understand where we are in the resource stories. And here's the thing that drives me nuts, Daniel. We could be doing things that would really stimulate the economy, that would really help us be more efficient in our energy use, and would be really good for the environment. And we could do all of these things, and instead there's some bizarre fixation on business as usual coming out of Washington, D.C., coming out of the banking sector, that's really preventing us from, I think, getting on with the adjustments we need to make. So you're right, they've doubled down. I was surprised that we were able to double down from 2008. I was surprised that there were so few people really put up a stink in the financial community about it. My private conversations with hedge fund managers, they're very concerned, as anybody is who's familiar with numbers. This is a really gigantic, bizarre experiment that's been run. And if you just went by the numbers, you'd have to say, wow, we spent a lot and got a little. That looks a little bit like a failure to me. But when you widen the lens up, you just got to say, oh my gosh, this isn't working. And I'm worried. I'm really worried that when this lets go, what we're going to find is that people's faith in institutions, and the Fed in particular, has been weakened. And I think the next downdraft could be extraordinary.
To widen your lens in economics and really in life, visit peakprosperity.com. You can check out Chris Martenson's work. The Crash Course, look, it was a great video back in 2008. And I know Chris has put a lot of work into updating it. Again, Chris, just to confirm, we have the shorter version. The condensed version is already out, and then we're getting the new chapters every week all the way into December of 2014.
That's right.
Okay, well, great. Everyone visit peakprosperity.com. Check out his work. It is a must. And if you can, and I think that's what the condensed version is for, you need to share this with your family. It's important that everybody understands the big picture, because you really it's a people strategy when you come to being prudent and preparing. You need to include as many people as possible in your inner circle of friends who can help you. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Daniel, it's been my pleasure.